Welcome to the Explainer. All right, I want you to picture us sitting around a crackling campfire, right? We're surrounded by pitch black darkness, and that's perfect because today we are diving headfirst into a pure survival horror story. We're unpacking the terrifying myth of a 3,000-year-old monster buried deep beneath the Egyptian sands. It's a tale of ancient curses, massive fatal mistakes, and just pure unstoppable evil that's been waiting patiently in the dark. He who has slept for centuries. Just let that hang in the air for a second. When you read those words from the ancient Black Book of the Dead, you aren't just reciting some old poem. As the legends warn us, speaking these exact words aloud was the ultimate fatal mistake made by some very foolish mortals. It was literally the spark that unleashed a nightmare locked away for millennia. Okay, let's dive into this. To understand the sheer scale of this curse, we have to rewind about 3,000 years back to the era of the pharaoh. The high priest, Imhotep, commits the ultimate sin, a forbidden, completely deadly affair with the pharaoh's mistress, Enkhsu-Numun. When the pharaoh finds out, well, they murder him. She takes her own life, and Imhotep steals her corpse, desperately trying to resurrect her with dark magic. But the guards stop him literally seconds before the ritual's done. Now think about that massive, eerie gap of 3,000 silent years. That brings us right up to 1923, when a group of greedy treasure hunters blindly stumble right onto his doorstep. Now, Imhotep didn't just die. He was subjected to the Hom-Dai, which is pretty much the most terrifying punishment imaginable. First, he was mummified alive. Just let that sink in. Alive. Second, hordes of living, flesh-eating scarab beetles were dumped into his coffin. And third, he was trapped in eternal agony. The beetles slowly ate him, but the dark magic of the curse meant he could never truly die. Actually, scratch that. It wasn't just a punishment. That endless, maddening suffering in the pitch-black darkness slowly transformed him into a living weapon of pure dark magic. And that brings us to where they buried him, Hamunaptra, the legendary city of the dead. Over the centuries, this place became a myth. Basically, a massive labyrinth of fatal traps specifically designed to keep intruders out forever. You can feel the creeping dread when our 1923 expedition finally steps inside. I mean, the whole city is rigged. In one horrifying moment, this incredibly greedy prison warden wanders off to pry some blue diamonds out of a wall. But the diamond is a trap. It's a living scarab beetle. It drops down, crawls into his shoe, burrows right under his skin, and travels straight up into his brain. The pain is so agonizing, he violently smashes his own head against a rock. Hamunaptra doesn't really welcome guests. So walking into this massive graveyard, we see this stark contrast between two rival teams. On one hand, you've got O'Connell, leading Evelyn and her brother Jonathan. They're mostly seeking knowledge, following a puzzle box key and an old map. On the other hand, you've got an American team, led by Benny, who is this cowardly former buddy of O'Connell's. The Americans are driven purely, blindingly by greed. What's really interesting here is that in a place like Hamunaptra, that blind greed inevitably marks them for a gruesome death. I mean, their diggers are the very first to trigger a trap, melting instantly from this hidden acid mechanism. It's brutal. Eventually, O'Connell's team triggers a trap of their own that drops this massive stone sarcophagus straight from the ceiling. When they use their puzzle box to pry it open, they make a genuinely chilling discovery. Inside is a mummy, over 3,000 years old, but the corpse looks horribly fresh, like it just died. And then O'Connell notices the most terrifying detail on the inside of the lid. Deep, frantic scratch marks. The dark realization hits the whole room at once. The creature inside didn't rest peacefully at all. It had been clawing at the solid stone in frantic, eternal suffering. Now, I want you to picture the camp that night. It's dead silent. Everyone is asleep. But Evelyn, who is just driven by this overwhelming curiosity, creeps out and steals the Black Book of the Dead from the Americans. She unlocks it, turns those ancient pages, and accidentally reads the resurrection spell out loud. He who has slept for centuries, he wakes. The 3,000-year-old mummy actually opens his eyes. A terrifying, totally inhuman scream echoes out across the quiet desert camp, just shattering the silence forever. The nightmare has officially begun. Instantly, the camp explodes into chaotic energy. This creature's awakening triggers a terrifying chain of literal biblical plagues. We're talking a massive swarm of deadly locusts sweeping in, devouring anyone who's too slow to run. The sky suddenly turns pitch black, and these massive fireballs start raining down from the heavens, setting the whole city on fire. And later, Imhotep even uses his dark magic to mind control massive mobs of innocent people, turning them into this zombie-like army just chanting his name. It is pure, unadulterated chaos. But amidst all this madness, the crucial point is that Imhotep has a terrifyingly specific target: 4 men. Why them? Because those 4 Americans had foolishly popped open a cursed chest earlier and stolen the sacred canopic jars. By taking those, they literally marked themselves. Imhotep has to hunt them down. To regenerate his rotting flesh and get his terrifying power back, he systematically tracks those 4 specific guys down to steal their eyes, their tongues, and drain their blood. Yeah, it's exactly as horrific as it sounds. As Imhotep regenerates, he turns into this absolutely terrifying shape-shifting sand monster. Bullets literally go right through him. But here is a wild, surprising survival fact to add to our campfire tale today. There is exactly one thing he's terrified of: a cat. In ancient Egyptian mythology, cats are the guardians of the underworld. So when Imhotep corners Evelyn and is just about to claim her, O'Connell bursts into the room holding a simple, fluffy white cat. The unstoppable 3,000-year-old monster takes one look at it, completely panics, turns into a whirlwind of sand, and just flees right out the window. It buys our heroes some much-needed time. And this all builds to a truly desperate, chaotic climax. Imhotep captures Evelyn, his ultimate goal being to sacrifice her so he can finally resurrect his ancient lover, Anxunamun. O'Connell and the crew recruit an old pilot buddy, Winston, to fly them back to Hamunaptra, but Imhotep just casually summons a 100-meter-high wall of solid sand that swallows their plane whole. Winston tragically sacrifices himself in the crash. Meanwhile, underground, a frantic final stand erupts. Imhotep raises an army of mummies, and Jonathan is just desperately trying to read from the Golden Book to take command of the mummy guards, which he finally manages to do, turning them against Anxunamun right before she can kill Evelyn. This brilliantly illustrates the ultimate cosmic balance of ancient magic. The Black Book of the Dead brings the dead to life, right? That's what started this whole mess. But the Golden Book of Amon-Ra, it strips immortality away. Evelyn finally reads the golden spell, and the absolute second she does, this spectral chariot bursts out of the ancient magic, crashes right through Imhotep, and completely steals away his dark godlike powers. Suddenly, he's just mortal again. And with one final strike, O'Connell knocks him straight into the black demonic waters of eternal damnation. The dust finally settles, but the city always demands a final toll, dividing the survivors from the greedy. Benny, who is driven by pure greed literally until his very last second, accidentally triggers the final collapsing trap. As the massive stone doors slowly grind shut, he is sealed alive in pitch-black darkness, surrounded by mountains of gold and a sea of flesh-eating scarabs. It's kind of poetic, honestly. Meanwhile, O'Connell, Evelyn, and Jonathan narrowly escape with their lives, riding off on camels with just a small bag of cursed golds. So our campfire burns down to embers. O'Connell and his team rode away into the sunrise with their lives and a bit of treasure. But we have to ask ourselves, did they truly escape the curse? The sands of Egypt are incredibly vast, and as we've learned today, some evils have absolutely no problem waiting patiently in the dark for thousands of years. Keep that in mind the next time you hear a strange whisper in the shadows. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and hey, stay curious out there.